What's up? It's Jasparboo. Welcome back to the sanctuary. You know what it is. I used to be a witch. I like to talk about it. I like to just scroll through TikTok. It is what it is. So, today I there's not really a big theme, but there's a lot of things going on in the world. So, come chill out with me. Let's scroll and figure out the vibes.
We're that micro generation that just somehow managed to dodge every major bullet in the last few decades. Because when you think about it, millennials graduated into the financial crisis in like a horrible job market. Gen Z graduated into COVID and lockdowns, and we all know how horrible that was. Millennials, for better or worse, have spent the last decade specializing in fields that very well could be replaced by AI or just become completely obsolete. Gen Z grew up with screens, algorithms, push notifications, and basically every harmful side of capitalism.
Yeah.
And somehow, those of us, in our late 20s and early 30s, we just kind of managed to sneak right through the middle. And best of all, we went to college during the golden era where everything was predominantly still in person and super social. Technology was fun, not invasive or addictive, and that's why we're kind of the lucky ones. I just don't think we really want to admit it. We're that micro generation that just
I mean, I see that we're the lucky ones, but it's also kind of sad seeing the downfall of it where like what I would give even to just like I hated the phone zombie thing in like 2016. This time where everybody's like, "Oh, mm, go back to 2016 aesthetic, blah blah." No, I watched so many of my friends, like so many people in general, honestly, be so sucked into the Zandemic, like not to mention the phone zombie things, where I would give anything to just go back to like 2015 and throw half of those phones out the window and just be like, can we just talk to each other? But I digress. I used to be the crunchy weirdo that didn't like the phones in the first place. So,
I'm not doing this. I've just realised I don't have to.
I've looked to my right, Deji. Looked to my left, AJ. These partners stink of poo. I've looked to my right,
tell it, girl.
Deji.
It's true.
Looked to my left.
But it's just the price I pay. Destiny is calling me. Open up my eager eyes.
Babe, wake up! New Boomer Affliction just dropped. And if you're a millennial or Gen Z parent, it's probably driving you nuts. It's called Gramnesia, a term recently made viral by millennial mom and therapist Allie McQuaid, which describes how a lot of these boomer grandparents these days seem to have totally forgotten what raising little kids is actually like. In her video, McQuaid explained how she's constantly hearing from mostly millennial clients talking about how their boomer parents make wild claims about how much easier it was to raise them than their grandkids are. Stuff like, oh, I had you potty trained by the time you were one, which, no you didn't, Linda. Or you never had tantrums when you were little, which also isn't real. And by the way, while we're here, if you're having trouble managing your kids' tantrums without having one yourself, we do have a free tool that you might find helpful. You can find it on our profile. Anyway, these Gramnesia claims that boomers are making aren't just ridiculous. Like, yeah, parenting in general has changed drastically in 40 years. Of course you remember it differently. But it's also incredibly frustrating and invalidating for parents, especially given how many millennial parents say that their own parents are not just unsupportive, but often uninterested in being a grandparent. Anyway, another therapist theorizes that Gramnesia probably stems from a lot of boomer grandparents' realizations about their own parenting, so they're trying to revise history to cover up for their own shortcomings. But again, it's also just the case that parenting now is completely different than 40 years ago. So no, millennial and Gen Z parents, your kids are not uniquely difficult. And therapists say that Gramnesia is yet another issue that ultimately comes down to setting boundaries. What kind of parenting input is and is not welcome. Because parenting is hard enough without your own parents rewriting history. Babe,
Yeah,
wake up, new boomer.
basically. I can't even lie. I am very blessed. I'm a Gen Z with a boomer parent, and it doesn't make it any easier that way. Um, Thankfully, she's a little more understanding, at least the one parent that's around. I will say that. Tries her best to be helpful, but the opinions that are always mildly unhelpful that I get from any kind of boomers, it's like, have you been paying attention for the last like 25 years? No? Okay, cool. Got it. Got it.
Affliction just dropped. And if you're a millennial or Gen Z parent,
Remember how this looks. Mm-hmm. Here's another one.
What is that?
Last one. Now,
Can
what does that
anybody
look like
tell
to
me
you?
about this? I
It just looks so
honestly don't
familiar to me.
understand.
Could it be? It looks oddly similar to this.
Okay, yes, it is way darker. I'm actually on diaper duty and had to, you know, do the normal things moms do. So, anyways, let's get back into the video.
And his family has been given like medical compensation or whatever.
Remember how this looks.
We didn't listen to them, and the last viewer that we sent up there, his soul is trapped on the moon. His body is in a coma in a special medical facility run by the CIA, and his family has been given like medical compensation or whatever. They told him, like, they told his family that the guy had died in the line of duty or whatever. And he's been held in stasis for years and years as they wait for his soul to come back from the moon, where apparently there's the capacity to lure and trap somebody's consciousness, which they finally did to one of these CIA remote viewers after repeatedly telling them not to surveil whatever's going on up there.
Strange. We had a guy on here named David Morehouse.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he was a remote viewer, a part of he was a part of these programs for a long time.
Dangerous.
I think it was in the 70s.
I read his book Psychic Warrior.
Psychic Warrior.
Early on.
Yeah. And he said that he remote viewed the moon and there was nothing. He's like, it's all bullshit. There's nobody there.
I don't know whether he was being blocked or what, but I
Yeah.
can tell you some other things about the moon that are much creepier than a city on the dark side of it.
Well, and here's another thing. If there was a city, why is it only on the dark side?
Well, because that side faces away from us all the time.
So because
That's the
whoever built
convenient-
it doesn't want us to see it?
Of course. Of
Okay.
course. That's the convenient place to put it. There's also another reason that's technical, which is that if you put, we've been studying this in terms of potential lunar colonization, that if you put listening telescopes, like the Arecibo dish,
Yeah.
stuff that's meant to convey signals across space. If you put it on the side of the moon that faces the Earth, there's too much interference with radio signals coming from the Earth. So if you want to have basically interspace communication from the moon to elsewhere, it's better to put something on the side that always faces away from us, so that you're not bombarded with radio signals that are
Right.
being transmitted from the Earth.
Right.
That's a technical reason why you would do it, but mainly I think it's, for concealment purposes. Okay, but
Okay, I'm gonna start by saying remote viewing, at least from what I know, is not the same thing as astral projection. I would caution you with astral projection as well. I do not believe we should take the risk of leaving our vessel empty, because the Bible speaks about house being swept clean, and then the entities coming back to what they see as a clean and empty vessel. So I would caution against this. I don't know enough about remote viewing necessarily, but what I do know is that it can get you into areas you don't necessarily want to be in. So, as I always like to say, I don't think it's right to demonize these things. I think it's conversation we should have, is what are our abilities. But I do believe that the spiritual gifts that are given through the Holy Spirit, through God, even before people are working within and with the Holy Spirit, it does not necessarily mean that you're using them for the right things. So discernment comes into play, and honestly, anybody who knows anything about witchcraft, that discernment is a really big deal. So let me know what you think in the comments.
Remember how this looks.
we didn't listen to
say the hard things other people won't. We need to talk about raising the retirement age. I don't know why everybody's afraid of raising the retirement age.
know.
We're working, we're living longer, and we're working longer anyway. And let me be Nobody
clear.
actually, retires and then goes and jumps on the hammock.
Abso-fucking-lutely not. Stop fucking the millennials and Gen Zers. We're still going through the grieving process of losing the American dream, not even being able to buy a house. Now you want to kick the can down the road and have us work till we're 75? We've been in a building from 9 to 5 since we were 4 years old. We go to school from 4 to 24. Then we thought we were going to work for 40 years, which is already exhausting enough. Now you want to kick the can down till we're 80 years old? We're working 2 jobs. Not because we're going to go buy a lake house or get a pool or go on a vacation. We're working 2 jobs just so we can afford to split rent with another adult. 30s and 40-year-olds are living with roommates because they can't afford shit, working 50 hours plus driving Uber on the weekends, and now you want us to retire later? You know what the politicians are going to do? They're starting to talk about all this shit now. They're going to wait until the final boomer actually retires. Then they're going to want to raise the retirement age so that the millennials and Gen Zs get fucked because they don't want to lose any votes from the boomer generation. So no. No, no, no.
I'll say the hard things other people won't.
They're also going to ostracize and basically drag through the muck our entire generation because honestly they may possibly expect us to fight another rich man's war.
You boomers, let me just rebuke you all. You are retiring and moving away from your children and abandoning them and not being generous toward them and not helping them. And when you die, you're not even including them in your estate. You despise your God and your children. You're an entirely greedy generation that loves money and power. How shameful is it that children are out giving parents? Let me say, when you get to be my age, you're making usually more than your 20-something kid who's just getting started, and they're out giving you. It's just disgusting.
Go to the gym, carry a firearm, overdose on caffeine, protect your stomach, smoke weed, bake sourdough, hate your government, love your country. Amen. I wish you were
I have
here.
been baptized twice. Once in water, once in flame. I will carry the fire of the Holy Spirit inside until I stand before my Lord for judgment. I have been baptized twice.